Hey, today I would like to talk to you a little bit about some of the diagrams and drawings that you're going to need to go through and complete your site when you're building up a co-location hosting facility. In this particular example, we're going to go through and use some mini pods from Digital Shovel, but really it kind of works for any kind of mobile container setup, whether it be AmpBox or some other type of mobile container solution for ASICs.
Great. Can't wait to see it. Thanks,
Awesome.
Joe.
All right, the very first thing you need to do is to be able to share your site with your engineers, your electricians, and your power company. They need to be able to understand the specifics of the site itself, where it's located, and some of the dimensions. The easiest way to do that is by locating the site plat map that is easily accessible from your county.
Great. What's next?
After that, the best thing to do is talk with your electrician. Work with them on going through and figure out what it's going to take, what the local codes are, and what you might need to put in order to go through and put this whole site together. In order to do that, they need to understand what your goals are and what you're trying to do. So the first thing is to have those meetings with them, and they'll come back with you and help you create some of these diagrams we're going to talk about here in the next few steps.
Great. This looks very exciting.
After you've gone through and worked with your electrician and your engineers, they're going to need you to bring in a contractor to do a lot of the work. Oftentimes, you're going to have to subcontract that work out to people who aren't the electrician to do things such as digging the ditches, running the cables, installing some of the equipment that the electrical people just aren't going to be working with. So you want to make sure you get a good feel for those costs, because you're going to combine those with your electrical cost and any costs that your utility might charge for any upgrades to the substations or their existing infrastructure.
Awesome.
So usually what happens at that point then is when you move to the next step is you're provided an engineered diagram. The reason this is important is it gets everyone talking on the same language. Your contractor, your electrician, the utility company, and also pretty important, your local permit office can see what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, and be able to make sure that you're able to move to the next step after permitting, and that there's no misunderstanding of what you're trying to accomplish with this project.
Cool. So yeah, it looks like we're going to be talking specifically, like you said, about the containerized solution as opposed to doing this as a retrofit warehouse project, right?
Absolutely. What's unique about this particular project, it really did come in multiple phases. The first one was dropping a mobile data center over here in the bottom right. Eventually, the site is going to be built out so that over here in this section, there is going to be a full warehouse for training, repairs, and logistics, such as sending and receiving ASICs.
Very cool. Yeah, so let's just whip through these next 3 slides.
All righty. In order to go through and be able to put the containerized solution on the site, you need to be able to go through and pour a concrete pad. In order to do that, your contractor is going to need to know the weight distribution of your particular setup. What's the weight that it actually needs to hold? Where is that weight actually distributed throughout the whole container itself? If you end up with the wrong mix of concrete, you may not have the support you need to handle those ASICs, because they're pretty heavy.
Cool.
The other thing that's really important to have as you're working with a particular container is the actual specifications of the container itself. Again, it helps you when you're going through and defining where you're going to place the container on a concrete pad. Plus, it allows you to go through and figure out setbacks and other size limitations you need as you're designing your site out.
Yeah, so these really look like some great tools to use when you're talking to your contractors, your utility provider, whoever's going to be involved, maybe even like an possible investor in the project, right?
Oh, 100%. You may have an idea of what you envision in your head, but sharing that idea with other people comes in the forms of these types of documents. Without these,
Awesome.
there could be a lot of ambiguity between you telling your engineer one thing or your contractor another. And if everyone has the same set of documents they're working with, it makes it that much more clear and gives you set up for a successful project.
Great. Yeah. So just show us a few more sample,
Sure, I got
diagrams or charts. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a couple more documents I want to kind of share with you. The container layout is pretty important. This one allows you to go through and talk about airflow and how much setback you're going to need to put these containers on a particular site. It's one thing to go through and just drop it in the middle, but if you're trying to optimize your site for expansion, planning this out ahead of time will really help. For example, you don't want to have the exhaust of one container pointing right to the intake of another container. That's just going to cause you problems with heat management down the road. So making sure you understand where the airflow goes, how wide these containers are, and how they should be set back on a property is pretty important.
Right. Yeah. And I can see how that would be a little bit different if you're retrofitting a warehouse. You just want to make sure you have hot aisles and cold aisles, right?
Absolutely. And that's a whole nother discussion altogether.
Great. So next you're going to share a little bit about like switch gear and different things to transform the power and interrupt the power from high voltage to starting to get into lower voltage.
Absolutely. And this becomes really important on your particular locale. They may require things that certain areas may or may not. You're going to have a switch gear when you come off of your transformer to be able to move that energy to your actual PDUs and then to the ASICs. And so having your electrician understand the gear that you're going to be providing him that he's going to be hooking up is super important.
Okay. So yeah, just to let everybody know, we're going to give you these slides in the members area. It's for members only. And yeah, thank you, Joe, for sharing this. So what's next?
In order to be able to provide power to every one of those ASICs, you're going to need a transformer. Depending on the utility you work with, some may offer them free if you're going through and doing secondary. Most often, you'll be in a primary situation with your local utility, which means you are going to have to purchase this transformer, and it will be up to you to maintain it. So there's lots of options for transformers that we'll talk about down the road. Buying locally, buying overseas, what kind of warranty, and definitely the specifications on how much power it can actually provide your box are all super important for you and your electrician and your power company to all be on the same pages with. My local
Great.
power company would not allow anything from overseas in China whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So while there's nothing wrong with it, and our industry often uses transformers from overseas to save on lead time and cost a lot of times, that wasn't something my power company was going to allow because they wanted to make sure that their technicians, even though it was my transformer, had the ability to work on it, and they only provided me with the ability to buy 3 different types of transformers.
Wow. Okay.
Metering cabinets. Now, metering cabinets are cool. They allow us to go through and separate us from the actual power companies. This comes usually before your transformer. Lot of different types of specifications for metering cabinets. Very specific on the particular power company for this implementation. They said it had to be this exact type. If it wasn't this, we would not service it. Because even though on this project, the site designer, the person who owned the site, had to purchase it, it becomes the property of the power company. So you're essentially buying it for them. So they get to have full say in how the specifications are set for this device.
Wow. Yeah. So I can see how that goes now, flowing from the high voltage into the lower voltage into the container in this example. And then on the next slide, you'll talk about actually plugging in the miners themselves into this power distribution, right?
Yep. And you would think that'd be the funnest and easiest part. But my goodness, it can be a maze of cables, both Ethernet and power cables. There's a lot of great groups out there that just, instead of buying a 9-foot cable and you figuring it out, they've actually gone through the trouble of designing their own cables and putting them together at very specific lengths and actually selling packages for well-known containers that are out there, whether it be
Right.
Bitmain or an Antminer or Digital Shovel or whatever it happens to be.
Okay. Yeah. So having the right cabling is great for that. Who might be interested in this sort of a chart or diagram?
This is often going to be the person who's helping you be the on-site manager of the technician you're going to have actually racking your ASICs. But it's important also to understand from the electrician standpoint what is going to be in there, because eventually you're going to have this thing signed off by a permitting officer who goes in there, looks at it, and says, yep, this is all up to code, and we agree with everything. We're signing you off, and you're good to power on. And so having all these documents there, letting them know you have a plan for it and what those specs are, goes just one step further to making that process even easier.
Well, that's great. Yeah. thanks, Joe, for showing us all these different diagrams and charts and like the site plat map. Those are great tools that you can use to show to different investors, like we were saying, to the electricians, to the utility company, to the actual technicians working on the site after it's been built, all from start to finish.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, a lot of these are used not only for investors, but if you're actually going for funding for banks, you'll have to have a lot of this. You have to show you have a plan and how you're going to be doing it. But also, it allows you to create the story that you want to share with others. And so by having all these documents together, you could always refer back to them, and it makes you seem like you've thought this out thoroughly so that others have confidence in what you're trying to achieve.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Joe, thanks for your time today and for showing us these sample plans. I think it's going to be useful in getting people to really think about their site and all the different documents that they might need. So the great thing is that there are actually companies that provide these services to give you the exact document that you might need for any particular person in the project or any certain touch point. So thanks again for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Great. All right.